Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors, episode 107, featuring Justin Gary, CEO of Stoneblade Entertainment and a co-creator of SolForge Fusion, a new Web3 game. So thanks for joining us, Justin. How are you doing today?
Doing great. My pleasure to be here.
Awesome. It's a pleasure to have you, and I look forward to hearing a bit more about your resume. I know you've been around the gaming space for quite a bit, and you're connected to Magic the Gathering, and you actually worked with their creator on this new project with SolForge, so really curious about that and hearing about it. I have a lot of friends who are very into Magic going back to my childhood, and so it's definitely a strong brand in kind of the tabletop gaming space, and I know they did kind of branch into the digital gaming and the on computer PC gaming as well. So really look forward to hearing about your kind of experience in that space and how your game developing has also led you into the Web3 space. So definitely excited about that. Thank you everyone for joining. This is Web3 Warriors. My name's David Chroma. I go by Chrome in the metaverse. And as always, we're going to be looking at the topic of the creator economy in Web3 and specifically how the blockchain and crypto is empowering developers, creators, and builders. And on this week's episode, we're going to be looking at a favorite topic of ours, which is Web3 gaming, specifically how blockchain is being incorporated into more and more types of video games to actually give the gamers as well as the developers more ownership and more buy-in in the actual game, and importantly, a kind of economic reality to the game that isn't really available in kind of the traditional Web 2 and prior gaming ecosystem. So really looking forward to hearing how SolForge is handling this, and really just kind of hopefully learning a bit more about how the development and the evolution of game developing in general and designing is maybe catching up to Web3 or evolving to kind of adapt to Web3 into the blockchain space. So as it is a common kind of topic on our show, we have talked to Kanan from Stardust, which was a really awesome kind of conversation about the on-chain wallet aspect and making it easy to incorporate your wallet in the Web3 games, which I think is an important aspect. that gets overlooked, but it has to be a simple thing, right? It shouldn't be something that's too confusing or complicated. We also talked to Murph from Decentral Games, and they were looking at kind of the casino angle of Web3 gaming and really just gambling, essentially, which is an interesting corner of the Web3 gaming space for sure. And they've been seeing a lot of success over in the Decentraland kind of metaverse. And then we also talked to Renz, who was a CEO of Breeder DAO over in Southeast Asia, where they've actually been a big part of the CryptoKitties space and other games that are very early Web3 games, but ultimately are kind of farming games. And the biggest criticism of those is that they're just not that fun. They're not that exciting, but they are fairly popular. And many people would say CryptoKitties and the like kind of led the way when it comes to quote unquote play to earn, and the idea that you should be able to actually make some game or make some real world money from the gaming that you're doing. So I think that's an interesting concept, although I think that as a gamer, I also empathize with those who see quote unquote play to earn as kind of the wrong ethos of gaming, right? You should be playing to have fun, and maybe you just happen to earn on the back end, but not necessarily playing to earn, right? So with that, Justin Gary's Substack is called Think Like a Game Designer. And so I'm hoping, Justin, you'll be able to share a little bit of your game designer perspective on what Web3 is going through and how Web3 games are kind of evolving from here. So with that, maybe I'm going to turn it over to you, Justin, and really get a sense of what you're working on, what SolForge Fusion's all about, but also just a little bit about your background. So maybe before we jump into Web3 and crypto, could you just tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you to the blockchain and all that? Thanks for joining.
Yeah. What a great, rich intro with lots of threads I want to pull on. So we'll start with my background, right? I've been making a living in games for over 25 years. I started off at the age of 17. I became the youngest U.S. national champion of Magic the Gathering. I traveled around the world, paid my way to college, playing in tournaments in Sydney, Rome, all over the world, including winning a World Team Championships in 2003. Eventually, after a brief and ill-advised stint at law school, I decided to become a game designer and moved across the country and started working on games like for Marvel, DC, World of Warcraft, tabletop games, card games, collectible games. And then in 2010, I decided to start my own company and launched my first game on my self-published game, Ascension. It's an Ascension deck building game, which became a runaway success. In fact, we have a crowdfund that's going to be going live as soon as this episode is aired on GameFound for our 17th expansion. Right, I've designed over 50 published games at this point in my career, so I have been at this for a while. Amazing. But honestly, the highlight of my career is this SolForge Fusion project, and the way it came about was a story I really like to share, which is, so after Ascension launched, I went to a developer conference, and at that conference, Richard Garfield was giving a talk, right? He's the guy that created Magic the Gathering. He's the granddaddy of it all, the entire collectible game space. So of course, I'm going to go learn from the master, right? Right. And I'm there in the audience, with everybody else listening to him talk. And at the end, there's a Q&A period. And one of the questions he gets asked is, what's your favorite game right now? And he says, Ascension, my game. And wow. I literally jump up like a kid in a candy store, like, woohoo, I could literally just, a whole room laughs. Yeah. But it created an opening. And so I said, okay, I went up to him after the talk was over. We started talking, and I kid you not, we talked for 3 hours straight. We were so in sync on exactly what we wanted to build, exactly what we wanted to create. And so that's where SolForge was originally born. And now that was the original version of SolForge, which this is back in 2011, to give you an idea of how long we've been working on this project. Nice. And that was, we launched it as the first mobile trading card game that was designed for mobile native, right? This is before things like Hearthstone or Magic Arena, for those that are familiar with those games, right? So we wanted to innovate, take the core of great gaming and innovate with what new technology brought us. So we've now, it's not only did we bring that game to mobile and PC, but things like Ascension have not only ported to mobile, but also VR versions. And now SolForge Fusion is taking advantage of the blockchain as well as new technologies in printing to be able to make what's the world's first hybrid deck game, which means that we live in tabletop, we live in Web 2, and we live in Web 3 to be able to provide gamers with a unparalleled experience that takes the best of all the knowledge Richard has from his 50 years of doing this, 40 years now of doing this, and my 25 plus years of doing this to make something pretty remarkable.
That is fascinating. Wow. That's an amazing origin story as well. So you were just a big fan of Magic. You didn't know that he played your game. Is Ascension also kind of like Hearthstone style? Was it also like a card style game, or?
So Ascension is a card style game, but it kind of takes the idea of like with a trading card game, right? The basic idea is you're gonna collect a bunch of different cards that you get out of randomized packs typically. So let's say there's 300 cards in the set. You'll buy random packs hoping to get the super rare ones. You'll build a deck out of the cards that you have, and you'll play the game. That's a really fun experience, but it can also be both pretty expensive and pretty involved. Ascension is basically takes this whole idea and puts it into one box. So you buy one box of Ascension. Everybody starts with a same basic deck of cards, and during the game, you actually acquire more cards for your deck. So the process of like getting cards is part of the fun of play. And then at the end of the game, you see who won, then you reset back to your basic decks, and you go to that experience again. Wow. In many ways, SolForge Fusion is really a hybrid of these two game categories. Ascension was one of the first of what we call a deck building game, which is where you build the deck during play, which is different than a trading card game, which is where you buy the cards and trade the cards. Gotcha. SolForge Fusion, as a hybrid deck game, we use new technology to digitally print, algorithmically generate and digitally print decks. So every single pack of SolForge Fusion you buy is one of a kind, unique. You will never see the same one twice. So that means that not only is it a one-of-one collectible in the physical world, but you can actually scan a QR code, which puts it into your digital collection. And then very soon, we'll be able to mint into an NFT, which will be a one-of-one NFT digital collectible. And so you can, instead of having to try to chase after the same rare cards everybody else is chasing after, you've got your rare deck that could have stories associated with it that could say, hey, I've won a world championships with this collectible deck, and it tracks it on the blockchain. Or we have storyline events where you actually will change the lore of the world, and we'll have our writers have written stories for decks. If you go to soulforgefusion.com/story, people can see the different lore that they've helped to develop. And then that becomes tied to the collectible in the NFT. And then that's something that you can go and trade and sell and be part of the community with that. So we've really tried to make the magic that we, for lack of a better term, that I felt that opening up my first packs of trading cards and bring it into the modern era by leveraging both modern printing technology and the blockchain to do stuff that was never possible before.
That is amazing. That's exactly the kind of use case we like to hear about. I have to ask, are you familiar with the word phygital? And is that how you might describe this kind of project? A blend of the physical and the digital?
Yeah, I've heard that term and a variety of others to discuss the space. And so to be honest, I have been deeply involved and fascinated by how do you get the best of the physical and digital worlds together, right? Because each one, there's a lot of games that have tried to combine the two and end up being worse than both, right? There's a lot of games that are, and so we've tried to make sure that it's something that each pillar of SolForge Fusion stands on its own. You can play the tabletop game without touching the digital. You can play the digital game without touching the physical. You can play both of those without touching Web3, and you can enter the Web3 space and be a part of the Web3 community. And all of them support each other. The same collection goes one-to-one from the physical world all the way to the NFT. And so it is nobody else has ever done anything like this. So we're breaking new ground, and it's something that Richard and I are both very excited to be able to do, because I think it adds real value to the players, right? And this is the thing where we'll get deeper into this, I'm sure, but right, like we talk about what's the challenges of incorporating Web3 into gaming. Why is there so much resistance in the Web2 world? And I think there's three major factors, right? One is show the value, like why do I actually need this? And that's not 100% clear to them. Two is have a user experience that doesn't suck, because most of them are terrible. As you mentioned, fun, like trying to get wallets integrated, right? Yeah, you may have something that's actually fun that I actually want to play, that's actually easy to get into. And then I think there's the security piece as well. You want to make sure that people feel comfortable and secure. People are used to playing in these walled gardens. And when you have your own stuff in your own wallet, just like if you have your own wallet, you're walking down the street at night and you're not taking care of it, right? There's some risks there. And so I think educating people on that and making them feel more comfortable working with people that have a reputation, right? There's a lot of these, anonymous game developers who launch a project, pump up a token or an NFT, and then disappear, right? And then there's enough of that scam in that previous bubble cycle that I think people got burned in. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm here, is to be like, look, I've been doing this for 25 years. Richard was doing this for 40 plus years. Like, we're not here for a quick pump and dump scam, right? We're here for the career, and we're here to show that there's actually value to our players, which is why we're coming into this space.
That's amazing. So when you talk about like charting new territory for this deck building kind of space and the tabletop space, to your point, you're not charting new territory with new people. You're actually taking yourself as a designer with decades of experience, and Richard as a tabletop game and the creator of Magic the Gathering, the most like successful tabletop game. I'm pretty sure Pokemon might have tried to catch up a little bit, but I don't think they quite caught up, right? So that's really fascinating that you're taking that experience and bringing it on chain, because I think that is so important when you look at people trying on-chain projects just kind of willy-nilly without having that background, it doesn't kind of lend the same kind of gravitas, right? And I'm looking at the art on your site. We have it up on the screen here at SolForgeFusion.com. Definitely some amazing artwork. And so looking at that piece and the fact that you do have this ability for the game to kind of function on its own in the physical world, in Web 2, in the digital world, and then jumping into Web 3, how do you kind of tie it all together? It sounds like the Web 3 part is not quite live yet, right? So what do you think is going to be kind of the biggest push to actually get people to embrace it? Like, what would be the reason? What's kind of the benefit of taking things on chain?
Yeah, so couple of things, right? We if for the deeper dive, we do have a Gitbook like kind of white paper that shows like the long-term vision and what we think is possible in this space. That it'll probably be more than we can cover here. But I'll walk through the short term, right? We're not live on Web3 yet, but we have the system up and running. We're testing it with our alpha users now. Like we're launching within the next 30 to 60 days, so it'll be very soon. And the reason why we're going to get people to adopt it is one, we're airdropping to our entire community, right? So anybody that's playing the game will have free tokens, have the ability to get NFTs. Like, so we're giving it away for free. And so, why try it? Because hey, it's free stuff. You get to try,
you go.
right? So that's one piece, right? And so I encourage anybody that wants to, you can play the game for free, create an account, be part of our community, and you'll get free tokens. You'll have the ability to mint NFTs. You'll be able to be part of our early NFT drops. Now, the other piece of it is, what is it that's immediately valuable, which is that idea that you really do own your stuff. And SolForge Fusion is a great example of this. And one is, if I have a physical version of SolForge Fusion, what I can do with it is I can take my physical deck, just like I could with any other trading card game. I could sell it to you. I could trade it to you. I could lend it to you. I can get it back, right? That's just natural. Trading card game players know this. It's just understood. It's the baseline of how you do this. When you play the digital version of the game, right now, you're stuck. The stuff's stuck in your account, right? So you can scan a deck in your online account. And if you want to, the way we designed the physical version is you can unlock it from your account, then take the physical deck, hand it to somebody else, and they can scan it into their account, then they lock into their account, then they can play it.
That's
and so
amazing.
what we've done is
you really did take that extra step to make sure like the actual transaction of exchanging hands is able to be replicated on the digital side.
Right. Right, exactly. And that's exactly the way the digital thing works. You lock it, if the deck's locked in your account, you can play it and it can't be traded. You can unlock it, put it into your wallet, trade it to whoever you want, do whatever you want with it. You own your stuff. You can take with it, do with it what you will. And I'll tell you, as a developer, we researched a lot of different chains. We researched what it would take to do this for ourselves. What if we wanted to do a purely like server side solution where we actually controlled and built everything? And it was actually way more both economical and efficient to use in this case, we use the Solana blockchain as our baseline to be able to launch that platform. It was way more freedom, a lot more freedom for players. They have a lot more transparency. They can see the smart contracts that we're using. They can actually, they know we can't change the thing and take it away from them. And so I think it's just a better experience as a developer, especially as a small developer like us, right? We've been making games for a long time, but we don't have the, $10 million, $50 million budgets that people like Blizzard and others do. Right. And this allows us to play in that space and be able to trade and sell and stuff that in many ways those big companies won't even let you do anymore. You can't trade your cards on Hearthstone. You can't do it on Magic Arena. They take that away from you because they control everything and they get to own it, and they pour money in, but you never get money out. And I think that's just wrong. I think players in the long run are going to gravitate to things where it's like, hey, I've invested. I don't believe you should be playing to earn, right? I think you should be playing the game because it's fun. Mm-hmm. But if you invest hundreds of hours, thousands of dollars into a game, which is a lot of our players do. A lot of people who play these games do. It becomes part of your lifestyle. I mean, I'm not just a president of the Hair Club for Men. I'm also a client, right? Like I've spent thousands of hours and thousands of dollars in all these games. I am here because I'm passionate about this space. But then, okay, you should be able to convert your collection. You should be able to trade and sell your stuff. So I just think it's the right thing to do for players, and I think it's going to be the right thing to do for games and as a business over time.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned like how the go-to right now and how it has been up until Web3, right, is the walled garden approach, and the idea that for whatever reason, if we let our users just kind of buy and sell digital assets kind of willy-nilly, and there are cases where in World of Warcraft, for example, or even Rocket League, where people will find little kind of chats and Discord groups to be able to actually pay people real money for their assets, and then they'd send them over. So like you have to find your way outside of the walled garden to try to actually have some kind of money exchange. But why are they taking the walled garden approach, especially in today's day and age where it would be easier, even just with digital cash, forgetting crypto, even just in the digital cash space? Why are they so concerned about like having that kind of economic ability to buy and sell your digital assets? And then how would you kind of pitch those kind of traditional entrenched game developers to embrace a more transparent approach with on-chain kind of dynamics? That's two questions at you there.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, at a baseline, right, as a developer, if I have a walled garden and my economy is all controlled internally and nobody can leak anything out, or I can shut down your account if you try to, like doing illegal. I mean, it is illegal selling of golds or accounts or stuff, right? Then I have complete control. And so as a developer, that's a very appealing thing, right? I could change the money currencies at any point. I could take all the money out of your account. I can throw things in. I could do whatever I want. So as a developer, by default, that's going to be, people want control. And so that's where I think for big companies that are super successful, they don't see any reason to upend that apple cart, right? It's a lot harder to develop a game with an open economy than it is to develop a game with a closed economy. So there's a lot more work that comes in, right? So that's where I think why developers, and especially a lot of the entrenched interests, are starting in with this idea of a closed economy, because there's also a lot more overhead. If you're going to do it with just like a digital cash system on a private service solution, there's a lot more legal overhead, there's a lot more customer support overhead, there's a lot more like that comes with that. Gotcha. As well. So I think that's the argument I would say against moving into this space, and why adoption has been slow so far.
And do you think that
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to go to your conclusion. You know, the next step, like, how do I convince them that they should go into this space and they should do it? And the answer is SolForge Fusion. The answer is that the reason they're going to come over is because they're going to see that players demand it. They're going to see that players are choosing games where they actually have ownership, where they actually have some control over the outcome, where they actually have some control over their digital objects. That's the only reason they're going to move, because if they're making all the money and they have complete control and they never have to leak any of their currency elsewhere, then why would they change? Why would they need to? Right? I don't think that they're going to do that. I think we have to show them via success and show them through via player adoption, because I think it's a real value proposition to players. And I think the other piece of it is the technology and tools are getting better and better all the time. So I didn't really talk about how I got into Web3, right? So I got into Web3 2016, 2017. I started getting, excited about what was happening in the space. I saw CryptoKitties. I actually made a blockchain game back in 2018 called Block Brawlers, just for fun. It was just because I thought the space was really fascinating. And I think but back then it was miserable to develop games for, because you had to just try to do on-chain things and trying to it was expensive. It was slow. It was terrible. Right. And so I was a fun experiment, but it wasn't there yet. Now here we are, whatever it is, 6 years later, and the tools are way, way better than they were then, right? And being able to build on Solana and build what we've done, we were able to just accelerate in a matter of just a few months to be able to build the whole system. And that's shocking and amazing. But there's still a long way to go, right? Like SolForge Fusion, we're not trying to make the whole game on chain. In fact, like if you look at the white paper that I referenced, like over the long term, that's exactly what I want. I want players to be managing the servers and being paid to do so. I want the game systems to be run on chain so that no matter what happens to me, if I get hit by a bus or Richard get hit by a bus and my company shuts down tomorrow, right, the game would still run, the community would still do it. I want to hand control over in a staged way that makes sense. And this is where my game design background really helps, because really trying to build a tokenomics, trying to build a system, trying to build an ecosystem and a governance structure that could house the game over the long term, right? I mean, I mentioned Ascension as the game I launched here. That game has been around for almost 15 years. We're celebrating our 15-year anniversary next year, right? Nice. I've SolForge. Been from the original version to now. We've been launching that one. I've been working on for 13 years. We have, even my Marvel and DC trading card games, a game that's still being made today. That's 20 years now, right? I make games to last. I want games that are going to, and of course, Richard Magic's now been around. I think it's 34 years, something like that. Insane, right? I want to make games that are going to last. And I think that to make digital games that have that same kind of longevity, you either need like a massive, massive infrastructure, it's like a Blizzard or World of Warcraft type of thing, or you need a community that can actually be sustainable, be incentivized to be sustained, and support the game over the long term. And that's something I'm really passionate about. I think like games like like I made a living playing Magic, and I loved the game Magic, but it wasn't the money and it wasn't even the game that kept me doing it for as long as I was. It was the people, it was the community, right? I was made friends that I still am friends with to this very day, some of which I started my company with, people who are like serious, bonds that I've built. And I think anybody out there that's a gamer that's playing any of these social games, whether it be a trading card game or an MMO or anything, right? That's why you're still in it. And so I want to build these kinds of communities. And I think that's what the tokenomics design and blockchain and DAOs and that kind of thing can do, is to really build communities, again, that were never possible before, that can connect people all over the world, and that can build something that's really powerful and that can stand the test of time.
Amazing. Yeah, there's a lot I want to unpack there. When you mentioned DAOs, are you concerned at all about a kind of very flat structure? I feel like, you come from the designer space and there has to be a certain level of kind of executive oversight. And I don't know, like, I feel like once, for example, in this case, yourself and Richard get taken out of the project, the overall kind of administration, right? How do you foresee that kind of actually being like handed over, or worst case scenario, like you said, hit by a bus and it's like a shock? You want to have an ecosystem that thrives, but you still kind of have to have somebody in power, right? Like, do you foresee like a chain of command situation where you do still have kind of like an executive board and some type of central kind of administration of it? Because what I've seen in this DAO space is like, it sounds amazing on paper, like the community runs everything, we vote on everything, everything's run on chain, but in actuality, like 5% show up to vote, and of that 5%, are they your smartest 5%? Are they making the best decisions? And then who actually executes on the decisions that get voted on? So it's been a difficult slog I've seen in the DAOs I've been involved with.
Yeah, no, it's a great insight, and no, my plan is not to turn the keys over to the mob and hope for the best, right? Like, right. I don't think that's the right strategy. Yeah. I think that in reality that there are different types of things for which the community is a great decision maker, and there are different types of things for which a centralized authority, or at the very least an expert class, is the decision maker. So when I talk about game design, right, you kind of mentioned, right, I teach game design. I have a book and a podcast called Think Like a Game Designer. I run a masterclass once a year. We'll be doing another one in early September, where we go through and like really work on the craft of design. I have studied this and tried to perfect this. I even teach like creativity and design at the Wharton School of Business. Like, this is an art form and not everybody can do it. And if you just ask the average person, like, hey, what would you like to see in this game? Most of the time, what they're going to tell you is terrible, and it will destroy the game. It will destroy the economy, right? Like, oh, I want to get more free stuff. Oh, I want to have less randomness. Like, oh, I want to have these things. And in fact, those elements and like having the pacing of how much randomness there is and the pacing of how much free stuff you get really are part of the frustrating you as part of the job as a game designer, right? You have to have the right level of tension and frustration so that when you do get rewards, when you do achieve a goal, it means something. So those are, I don't believe I would hand over like design choices like that, but on the flip side, when it comes to like, how do you want to manage the community fund? When you look at our token economics, we're building the majority of it. The majority of the pool is either airdropped. We have airdrops that are going to be happening throughout the year to use for marketing, to bring people in, to reward our players. And then the biggest chunk of the pool entirely is controlled by the community. And that token pool is going to be used to decide which tournaments we want to run. How do you reward streamers and people who are growing the community? How do you want to, like, what new formats do you want to build? What other side projects and add-ons to utilize the IP and the NFT do you want to do? That's exactly the kind of stuff the community should be making decisions on, because it's the community that's going to be the ones that, are going to support it and are going to grow from it. So that type of decision making is the stuff I want to hand off, as soon as we are able to do so. When it comes to like, what should the next card design be and what's the next release and how do we balance the cards, like, no, that's stuff that we're going to hold on to. And again, it's not just me and Richard, right? I have a team of very talented people that I have trained, that I've brought in from other places to help build this stuff. This is not an easy thing to do. So we, one way or another, we will leave that part of the game in good hands. And I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, any game that can last 10 plus years and have regular players is doing something right for sure, and that's super impressive. And kudos to you and Richard, of course, for decades of success. Looking at the Solana blockchain now, I'm assuming, you had SolForge for 11 years, so the naming convention just happened to work out nicely. But do you have?
Yes, we call ourselves soulmates.
There you go, soulmates, perfect. But looking at the Solana blockchain, why why else did you choose Solana? Obviously, they're known for being fairly low on gas fees and kind of sustainable on that side. Obviously, a little bit more maybe eco-friendly, depending on how you kind of view the way that their blockchain is set up. And then they also run on Rust, I believe, right, which is a little bit different of a programming language compared to Solidity. Did any of these kind of factors play into why you chose to go with Solana, or how did that work out?
Yeah, 100%. We spent a lot of time. We talked to a lot of the different chains. We're fortunate enough to be able to get some direct connections to a lot of the developers and the Solana Foundation folk. And at the end of the day, yes, environmental factors played a role. The gas fees played a big role, and the ease of development and the developers that we had access to and how easy they were to work with to be able to get things moving and to be able to connect with the chain. Those were the major factors for us. We want to be responsible members of the world. But the idea that I would tell my players, and this is one of the big things right in Web2 space, right? Hey, you want to be able to trade this thing, you got to spend $4 if you want to trade it or move it on chain or off chain every time, blah blah blah. Like, people don't want to do that, right? They don't. I mean, they don't want to do that. Like, and understandably, right? Whereas like in Solana, the same transaction would cost pennies, right? It's like, okay, fine, like they'll just put $5 or long enough that they don't care, right? Like, to me, that's just like it was all about how easy is the adoption for us as a developer and for our players. And then, from there, it became a no-brainer for us that Solana was the right platform. Now, we do want to be multi-chain over the long term. Like, I just want to be clear. Like, we are working, there's a lot of other great, bridge and layer 0 technologies. There's a lot of things that we want to be everywhere for everybody, just like we're in tabletop and Web2 and whatever, right? I want to be able to have our NFTs be traded, have the ability to connect to the other blockchains. But Solana was by far the easiest and most cost-effective to develop on. They have a great community, and so we're really excited to be a part of it.
Amazing. Yeah, and I love that you added that goal to be kind of multi-chain eventually as well, or that's what it's all about, I think. And to your point, do you think that like an Ethereum is even capable of really being a Web3 gaming platform? Obviously, you see these layer 2 solutions around like Polygon and others that are trying to make it more feasible. But like Polygon, for example, as the network grows, their fees are going up, right? And so even now, I think it's like $1-2. It's still cheaper than your typical Ethereum, but it is getting up there a bit if you compare it to a Solana, for example. But do you think that Ethereum's ecosystem can still kind of support fun Web3 games like what you're building, or what other builders are working on?
Man. Look, I'm very bullish on this technology over the long term. I think it's very frothy right now. Like, who knows what the solution's going to be? And I'm not the tech savvy guy that's going to be able to answer that question for you, right? Like, I think at some point, whether it's Polygon, whether it's a layer 2, whether it's a layer 0, whether it's how these things all connect, like, somebody's going to crack this because the community's too big. There's too much interest. There's too much opportunity here. So it's just a matter of when and exactly how, not if. I think all what in my long-term vision of this, right? Every chain will have its specific uses and kind of niches, just like, and they'll all be connected in a way that's easy to do. Just like with the internet, right? Maybe I'll want to go to Facebook to go and talk to my grandma, and I'll go to Instagram to be able to promote something, and I'll go to TikTok because I'm super bored. And like, they're all different little networks that are all connected together, but in this case they're centrally controlled, and I'm giving all my data away to these massive megacorps. Instead, it could be like, hey, I'm going to go on Solana because this is the best place for me to like trade and mint NFTs and be able to do that. I'm going to go on Ethereum because it's got the most full featured set and I can do a lot more powerful things there. I'm going to go over to Thorchain, whatever, like whatever the different things are, and we'll jump in the same way that we do from website to website now. I just think the tech's not there yet, and it's going to take a little time for it to figure out how we're going to play that and how we're going to move smoothly from project to project.
Yeah, super cool. And so when you're looking at kind of the on-chain components, you mentioned how you're essentially looking at, you got the physical cards, you've got the digital kind of Web2 cards that are in the game already, and then now you have this Web3 on-chain Solana digital assets that are still going to be a copy of that same card. So how is the on-chain portion kind of adding to the overall ecosystem? Like, would you say that basically how are you going to handle the transactions with the movement being reflected back both in physical and in, I guess, your Web2 game? Is there going to still be that kind of speaking back? Like, if you trade your card on your Solana wallet? Is that going to be reflected in the game? And then are you expected to not own the physical card in your real world? Like how, I'm just wondering, you know, to what extent does the on-chain mirror the physical and kind of, the whole way through?
Yeah. We've mirrored it as close to 100% as possible. We want to make it as intuitive and straightforward as possible. So the way the game works, what matters is the object locked into your digital account or not?
Right.
So if that's a physical deck and I scan it into my digital account, it's locked into that account. And only, even though I still obviously could still have the physical deck and hand it to somebody else, if you want to play in a tournament, if you want to get credit for your gaming, if you want to do anything, we check to see, is this in your account? If so, great, you can play. If not, then you just got cardboard that doesn't, obviously we can't stop you from playing at home on your kitchen table or whatever, I don't care. But it's all about having the digital object in your account. If you're going to play the game as a Web2 game, of course, you have to have the digital object in your account. It checks it, see if it's there. If you want to play it as if you want to trade your deck as an NFT, you have to unlock it from your account. Exactly the same way if I want to trade my deck as a physical deck. So if I unlock it from my account, now it's in my wallet. I can now trade it, sell it, put it on an exchange, do whatever I want with it, but I can't play it in the game. If I want to play it in the game, I have to lock it back into the account, which means it can no longer be exchanged, it can no longer be traded, and now it's a fully playable game object. Gotcha. So that's by locking the NFT in your account, we basically give you that digital object in the game. Amazing. And so it also allows us to be able to play more, like on Steam, for example, they don't allow you to actually technically have NFTs and then create NFTs in their games, but you don't, right? In the actual game, you've locked your NFT into your digital account, and we give you a digital object in the game to be able to play with. So it allows us to be more accessible than other games are.
And even then, you're getting the asset. It's initially the physical, right? Because you're scanning the QR code from the physical. Is it always going to be kind of the seed of the asset is in the physical?
No. Definitely 100% not. You can buy purely digital objects.
Right, because it can just stand on its own. You will be able to buy a digital object. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So if you download SolForge Fusion right now, you can buy. There's an in-app store. You can buy digital objects there. You can buy codes for digital objects on our website on stoneblade.com, and then we'll actually have. Obviously, of course, we'll be able to buy NFTs on exchanges once those are live in 30 to 60 days.
Very cool, amazing. Do you have any thoughts on the metaverse as an overall kind of on-chain 3D ecosystem that many people had very high hopes for going back about 2-3 years ago, I think, and maybe a lot of those hopes haven't quite materialized, but I do think it's an important part of the Web3 gaming conversation, and the idea that there can be a metaverse space where we all kind of own our own little plots of land and we actually are a community in the digital world. Do you have any thoughts around that, or is it something you're not as interested in?
No, I'm very interested in it, right? I mean, I read Ready Player One when I was a kid too, and I love the idea of this like space, right? So the question is, what do you mean when you say metaverse in detail, and what is it that we really want, and what are the incentives that society moves us into, right? So we already have digital ecosystems that we're all a part of, right? We could be a social network, it can be a Discord channel that we're hanging out in, it could be inside of a game, massively multiplayer online game, right? These are communities that we all exist in now, some more or less, right? There's some that are virtual reality, but people don't want to spend their lives in virtual reality right now. It's the tech isn't there, and so the question is, what qualifies as a metaverse, right? Why do I care about this particular thing? And the challenges are, when I'm going to adopt a quote unquote metaverse, there's this vision I think people have of like, oh, well, I could just bring in my Fortnite character, and you can bring your sword from Legend of Zelda, and I could bring this trading card from Thing, and then somehow they're all going to just like magically interact in some way that makes sense, right? That's not right. If that's the vision, I think we're very far away from it, because there's a lot of forces at play that make that the people who have all of those IP do not want them to be playing together. There's no reason for people to bring that space together. Right. So I think it's just a question of like, what social spaces exist that give people enough value that are going to draw others in, and then it becomes a network effect thing, right? So I think you're looking to solve this problem the exact same way. I mean, look, Meta has specifically invested a lot of money into this space. Right. They're very much trying to be the ones that own this. I think that there will be, as the tech gets better, of course, people are going to want to hang out and interact in virtual space, because it's just, look, even just us here being able to have kind of video chat conversation and stream it to the world, like that wasn't really very common 10 years ago, 20 years ago, right? 10 years, 20 years from now, bandwidth gets to where it is. We can all like, I've been in these virtual like parties,
Right.
they started to get like where we're all in the VR and there's a DJ playing and we're hanging out and looking at virtual art NFTs and good. It's okay, but it's not like, it hasn't crossed that threshold from being like, I really want to spend a lot of time
exciting
here. So,
yeah, I hear you. And I think it is a community angle. Like we have our headquarters in the crypto voxel space, which now calls themselves voxels, just very Minecraft style voxel build out, but it's a very cool community. And during 2021 2022, like you said, it was just a community hangout, and we'd have parties in there, we'd connect, we'd listen to music, show off some of our NFT art and things like that. But I think there was, as part of that fun, a lot of speculation and the hope that this was going to get more fun and more exciting and more popular. And when the opposite happened, things seem to have quieted off quite a bit. And now there's no one hanging out and having parties in the metaverse anymore. So I think, to your point, it's kind of cracking that code of like, what is the value add? What is the real reason to be there outside of speculating about its future worth? Like what's the actual fun, sticky thing that brings you back over and over? And I don't think they've cracked that code yet, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think there's like the value of like bringing people together in the real world. Look, as I said, most of my business, most of my life has been in the tabletop gaming space. And if you had told me 20, 25 years ago that tabletop gaming would be bigger than it ever was after the iPhone and the internet and iPads and virtual reality and all that stuff got to where it is, I would have laughed at you. I honestly would never have expected it. And then, but that's exactly what's happened, right? The tabletop gaming and like in-person gaming is bigger than it's ever been. And I think it's because people want that connection. And right now, virtual reality and the online world does not just replace that. Now, it provides a lot of other things. It provides convenience. It provides connection that I can be with you in a different country, in a different place, at a different time. Like we can all, like that is really valuable. But I think we're still going to want the physical get together. That's why we're having our Ascension World Championships at Gen Con in next week. We have like a physical version of the thing. Like I think that what I have been trying to do for a lot of the last 20 years of my career is to really find the best of both worlds and create communities that can have those moments when we can all get together and physically be in the same room and celebrate together. That's fantastic. But we have the threads that connect us through the digital space that can never go away, no matter where we are, no matter how little time we have. I can jump online, play a game for 10 minutes, chat and follow up on a Discord chat, get back to my normal life. And that's still there and a part of it. And then when I can break away and have these real gatherings and have these things where we sit around a table, we laugh and we drink, and we play games, I never want that to go away, and I don't think the virtual reality world's anywhere close to replacing that.
No, and I don't think it will ever, like you said, ever be able to fully replace, actual physical hanging out and talking to people in real life. But I think that it should be more fun, and we'll see where it evolves to. Looking at kind of the hurdles facing Web3 gaming, right? I've noticed on your site you talk about this kind of core attributes and the idea of having curiosity, obsession, resilience, and empathy kind of baked into the design and the development of your video game. How much do you think those factors are part of kind of the hurdles facing Web3 gaming? And like you said, I think it's definitely a matter of the technology catching up in a large part. But I look at something like Solana and the speeds that they offer and a lot of the functionality that they offer. And I just wonder, what are the hurdles stopping, something like what you're doing from being more commonplace? And I don't see many other companies that have been around 10, 20 years like you have really, jumping in with both feet. So I'm just wondering what you think.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes into answering that question, right? The idea of the core attributes is something I took from my old days as a Dungeons and Dragons player, right? Where I had, you have your core attributes are like strength, dexterity, wisdom, right, charisma, right. And those are like when you want to do stuff in the world, you check against those stats, and the higher those stats are, the more likely you are to succeed at anything. And so I was like, okay, what would that be if I was in real life? What would actually those things be? And I came up with that acronym CORE, this curiosity, obsession, resilience, and empathy, because it starts with curiosity, right? And I'll use this as a map onto my Web3 experience, right? The reason I'm here in the first place, because I was really curious about it. I was like, hey, this is really interesting. What does this technology provide? What can I do that I couldn't do before? I started getting involved in communities. I started researching what was going on. I started envisioning what might be possible in the future, talking with other people about it. I got really, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And then I became super obsessed, right? I became like, okay, I'm going to research all the chains. I'm going to like really dive deep. What are the other games that are out there? What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? And I just like, an obsession is really about, it tends to get a bad reputation, that word, but it's not like addiction. It's not like doing it but it is being able to focus on something so deeply that you can block out all distractions and all the other things that are going on. That's just like critical part of being successful, no matter what it is you want to do in your life.
Yeah.
And then resilience is how do you manage to get past roadblocks? Because whatever you want to do that's new and interesting and hard, life is going to punch you in the face. You're going to have problems. And adopting, let me tell you, when I first announced that we were doing a Web3, our audience from our Web2 audience they rioted. I mean, it was like massive, like very negative themed chats in our Discord, lots of fire along the internet, some negative review bombing us. We saw all of that,
Wow.
right? And I had to be able to weather that. And fortunately, I've had enough failures in my life that I know how to handle these things. I've had enough people tell me from my early days working on Marvel Comics games where people would tell me I should be killed because I made Spider-Man too weak or whatever. Like, I mean, like, I've learned to take all the internet opinions with a grain of salt. So
Right.
getting resilience there. But then empathy is the real key part of it, because I didn't just say, you're just yelling at me, who cares what you think? I said, no, we're listening, right? I got involved in the Discord conversations. I did AMAs. I've been on podcasts, not just like these, which tend to be more of a Web3 friendly audience, but a lot of the Web2 audiences that were skeptical. And I talked through and I listened to what they said. And I said, okay, I'm going to both be able to communicate in a way that you can understand the value, and I'm going to listen and be able to modify things that help to make this more secure. So we're, building a much cleaner, FAQ and walkthrough to get people on their first wallet and connect the wallet to their account and going through that process. Being able to have better security systems like two-factor authentication and CAPTCHAs to make people be able to protect their accounts a little bit better and walk them through how to be able to protect themselves with their own wallets and what the best practices are. Being able to make sure that the game was in fact a game that stood alone in each of the separate pillars, that we are not forcing you into Web3. We're letting you get into Web3. Or if you're a Web3 player, you don't have to go buy a physical version of the cards if you don't care about the physical game, right? So there's a lot of things where I had to listen to our players and try to put myself in their shoes and say, okay, if I were not so obsessed with Web3 and excited and believing in the future, and I just heard about this thing, what would I be afraid of? What would be stopping me? What would make me excited? And then being able to understand that, and with any project you're going to launch, that becomes super critical. And so I think, to kind of circle back to the broader space of what it's going to take for Web3 to get massive adoption, right? It's going to take a lot of people having the kind of courage to push forward, and it's going to take a lot of and it's not going to take a lot. It's going to take really one or two real use cases of like, wow, this is so cool, this is so easy to do, me and my friends are all doing this, come on board, let's try it. And if you look at, like, I'll speak from the gaming world because that's what I know the best. Every time there's a new business model in games, people riot. Trading card games, people thought it was a money grab. People thought it was a terrible thing. And in fact, it costs way more to play a trading card game than it does to play a traditional tabletop game. You buy one box, essentially you buy one box, you're good. Magic, you could spend $100s, thousands of dollars, you still don't have your whole collection. People rioted against that. People rioted when there were subscription games like World of Warcraft, and it's like, oh my God, you want me to not just buy the box? Do you want me to pay $10 a month? Are you monsters?
Right.
Or free-to-play games. Yeah. Free-to-play games, when people still riot about that, right? But it became the number one business model. And each one of those things had value that demonstrated to the user, right? A free-to-play game, I can try it and I don't have to worry about, and see if I like it, and I'll pay if I want to pay. Yeah. A trading card game created this new possibility of something that is ever expanding and ever discovering, right? There's all these opportunities. And so the same thing has to happen with Web3, where people will be resistant, they will fight it. And then once they start to see, wow, there's really something here that's great for me as a player, then the adoption curve will skyrocket. Yeah. And I think that's what it's going to take.
And you start like really exploring the space. And then, like you say, it skyrockets for sure. And what has the feedback been like so far on SolForge Fusion? And would you say it's still in beta right now, or how are you handling kind of the rollout?
Yeah. We call it early access, right? So again, the physical version of the game we launched in October of 2022. So that's been out for a little while, and that's done great. We've sold over 1 million decks of cards, right? Wow, so it's a lot of people that are playing. Amazing. A lot of people are excited about it. The digital version, we launched it in early access on Steam. It's available only on PC right now. And that was early access in April. So very recent, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we're just a couple of months. And then the Web3 launch is going to launch soon. We're working on a Mac version. Eventually we'll moving to mobile, right? So it's still very early in the life cycle of the game. And there's a lot of things that are being developed. We're still continuing to work with our community to find, feature improvements. And we're working on, and helping to pick the priorities about what we develop next. projects. There's so many things that I want to build, so many things that I'm excited to build. But we're a small team, right? We're maybe a dozen people between this and all the other projects we work on, and it's a lot. And so we're building it slowly. We're building it in conjunction with the community, and we're really excited to welcome the new Web3 communities that will be joining as we launch this new set of features and bring in the Solana community and others.
That's super cool. And how have you been handling that promotion up till now? Like, are you doing a lot of promoting to the Solana community? Do you think you have a lot of people playing it in anticipation of the on-chain dynamics as of right now? Or is it really just, like you said, kind of standing on its own and not too concerned about, necessarily a lot of Web3 adoption from the jump?
Yeah, so it's whatever. Obviously, I'm having conversations like this one. I enjoy these kinds of conversations, but I'm also trying to reach these communities, right? I want to be educating the communities that were coming. Of course, I want to bring plenty of people in, but I think that there's a real trap here potentially too, because a lot of these games and projects that launch, they want to hype it up. They want to hype up their token. They want to hype everything. And then you get a lot of people that are coming in as degens that just want to make a quick buck. And then maybe the price spikes a little bit and then they all see it turn and then they all leave and then the spike crashes and then you've got a self-fulfilling prophecy of a dead project, right? I don't want that either. So yes, I want people to come in, but all I'm asking, again, I'm not selling the token. I'm just giving it away. I want people who actually play the game to enjoy the game. And if you like the game, then there's a lot of things here and you can go and collect NFTs and earn the tokens and do all the things. So I think if you're excited about it, my only ask is come play the game, right? Come play it, try it.
Very cool.
And if you like it, then there's a whole other world to unlock. And if you want to know more, of course, we have our Discord. Anybody can join. You go to stoneblade.com. There's links to that. There's tons of, if you're excited about the lore of the world, we have cool trailer videos, and we have a lot of the abilities. You can see the decks that have actually influenced the lore of the world from SolForgeFusion.com and the story links. There's a lot of there's a deep dive to be had here. But for right now, I just think play the game. If you like the game, we're happy to welcome you to our community. If you don't, then okay, that's cool. There's plenty of other games out there, So we're trying to attract Web3 users, but I want the right kinds of users.
No doubt, no doubt. And are you concerned at all about the kind of tokenomics price action? Because I feel like a little bit of volatility is going to happen, right? Especially generally in the earlier days of the launch. And
of course,
you get people who hear about it like they hear about it on this podcast and oh, wait, I'm going to get free tokens if I go play. I better go play the shit out of this game. And then as soon as I get my free tokens, I'm going to sell it and dip out. There will be those degens, unfortunately. But to your point, wanting the gaming, wanting the people who actually maybe have some history of playing Magic, have an affinity to the type of games you're playing, that makes sense. And I think you're going about targeting it the right way and building it out the right way. But I'm just curious, are you concerned about kind of the price action side of things?
Listen, I don't have control over that sort of stuff. I'm not trying to have control of that sort of stuff. Of course, we recognize that degens are going to be here. Of course, people who believe in the project and think it's going to go up, they will do the things that they do. That's fine, right? If that ends up being 10% or 20% of our audience because they're in that space, I don't think it's a problem.
Right.
I think it's a problem when it's 80% of the audience is those people.
Gotcha.
That's the problem, right?
And since you've built up the audience already prior to now, there's very little chance that it's going to be that much of your user base, right?
Exactly, and that's why we launched this very intentionally the way we did. Right? We launched the tabletop game with no digital version at all. We launched the Web 2 version with no Web 3 version at all. We're going to launch the Web 3 version next because we already have a base of players. We know the game is fun. We've got people who love it just for the game who weren't expecting a Web3 piece there. Now they're being brought on board to the Web3 side. We're going to bring the Web3 people over into a world that you actually have a great game. Not to say anything bad about the games that already exist on Web3, but let's be honest, a lot of them are terrible. And I think because people started with the tokenomics and they ended up backing into a game. And we've started with great game first, great community second, tokenomics third. And tokenomics are so important. It's all there, right? We spent a lot of time thinking about it. Again, you can see how we've broken it down and what the strategy is there. But I think if you don't have those other two things, you're wasting your time trying to, move the needle on the tokens. I think you're just a short-term play, and I am very much a long-term play.
Love it. That's exactly right. We see way too many of that. And I think to your point, it's about the decades of game building experience between you and Roger and not really about the tokenomics at all. And I think that you have enough of a resume and a built-up fan base that you probably don't have to worry about the degens really spoiling the project. And it's got a lot of longevity.
Yes.
Just curious on the mobile side that you mentioned, do you think that mobile games are kind of more primed to embrace Web3 gaming and on-chain dynamics than maybe the PC ones?
It's a good question. I don't know that I have. I don't know that I have an informed answer for you. I think again, for me, it's more about like bringing a great game, and mobile gaming. You have different needs. Like it needs your experience needs to be a little bit more bite size, accessible in shorter chunks. Kind of even tighter interface to work with, and that's why we built SolForge. Because again, SolForge, the original version of SolForge was built when the iPhone was out, and I was like, oh, we got to make games with it. It was built for mobile. So you only have ever 5 cards in hand. You have 5 lanes of combat. Your cards all level up as you play them. So it's designed to like function really well on a small screen.
Nice.
And I think that in terms of the, how much there's going to be Web3 adoption in one space or another, this is just a guess, but I actually don't think it's going to be better and more. I think because in the mobile space, you have more protected walled gardens in general, right? Like
Right.
Apple's not, they're not letting you in with a,
Right.
NFT Web3 trading easily. It'll change, but like it'll be slower. And I think that it's more right now, you're going to see more kind of tech savvy people that are going to want to be more invited in the Web3 space. And I think it'll trickle down over time as you get people just, again,
Right.
our goal is to get people to love the game, and then they'll find the Web3 elements as they get more into it.
Right, and I guess there are kind of some security concerns around the mobile side of things as well once you get onto on-chain and using the decentralized wallet. And do you think that on-chain art can play a role in this kind of Web3 gaming evolution? Do you see a future where maybe you could actually, depending on the type of game, obviously, but like thinking like a GTA or kind of open world adventure style game where you could actually have your owned on-chain art kind of on the walls of your space in the digital world? Like, do you see a future where, because like I love my on-chain art and I love showing it off in a metaverse that maybe nobody's walking around in, that's okay, but it'd be cooler if I could show it off to like my Web2 friends and my gamer friends who wouldn't otherwise, even be aware of what NFTs are. But if I could just like show it on a wall, they'd be like, oh cool, you actually own that, like you paid for it and you could sell it tomorrow. It's like, yeah, I don't know, I just think that'd be a cool future.
Yeah, so I think about this in the same way I think about cosmetics in games in general, right? Forget the Web3 element for a second, right? When people care about cosmetics when they're built into a system that they can easily show it off to their friends, right? I can have a series of badges in my own private collection, and that's one thing. But if I have a skin that's going to be, and everybody that I play is going to see me as that character while we're playing them, that's where we hang out, is playing Fortnite or playing whatever, right? That's going to be way more valuable, and Fortnite makes all their money from this because that's where people are incentivized to hang out and play.
Yeah.
So if there is a world like that, then I think this will, it'll take off. Why? But again, why is a game company that's building like a GTA 6 or whatever is coming out, why would they ever care to let you have your NFTs brought in as opposed to them selling you the one that you actually want from them, right? That's the biggest challenge. And that's why I just don't think the big players are going to be the ones that lead the charge here. Yeah. It's going to have to be the little guy and those of us that are trying to like build something new and we're more interested in building something new that really is useful and serves our players than we are in taking our massive billion-dollar franchise and launching the next iteration of it. I just don't think they're gonna. I don't think they're gonna be the ones that are gonna risk
fair enough.
sales.
We like to say in the Web3 space, we're shifting kind of from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, and I think you've made the case for the value proposition on the gamer side and the consumer side very clear when coming, embracing Web3. But I do like to think that even on the developer side, right? Like even whether it's the tokenomics, whether it's the on-chain trading of these digital assets potentially generating revenue, I would like to think that the company like yourselves and Stoneblade do have a value proposition from the developer side to embrace Web3 and to embrace the on-chain tradability, and that it actually can bring in new revenues beyond what a walled garden could do. And I know, we're not quite there yet, but I can see a future where it is actually more lucrative to have an open economy and to allow for, more creativity and trading amongst your users. Yeah, but maybe that's not the case. But I feel like it could be the scenario where that's actually more lucrative.
Yeah, there's two sides that this can work on from a developer's perspective, right? One is cost to develop in the first place. And that's something that was very quickly already valuable for us as right now, right? Building a trading system and system of tokens on Solana was way easier than it would have been to build that custom system on our own servers or using, traditional methods. So already that's happening. And so smaller developers will build where they can build more economically, and that will help one piece. So that's going to continue to get better and better the more that's, and the fact that blockchain technologies and contracts are generally speaking open source and they're very visible, like lets people build off of that and learn from that and grow.
Right.
So that's one piece. And then the other side of it is like discovery. And, as I mentioned, if players choose to play games like this, if players choose with their dollars and choose with their whatever kind of currency they have to play these kinds of games, then of course developers will follow. And also, I think that there's a thing like what we're doing, right? Where we're not just we're going to airdrop to our players. We're also going to be airdropping to a few other key communities that we think would love our game, awesome. Right? Then that's a great advertising tool that's available that I don't have. Again, Blizzard launches a game like Hearthstone. They spend $3 million in advertising in the first week. Wow. I don't have that. I'm not doing that. Right. So instead, I'm gonna distribute 3 million tokens to people who might want to try the game, and all of a sudden, I've got a new adoption system and a new marketing system. Nice. So I think that's another place where, as a developer, there are some tools that exist today that are, I think, compelling reasons to build in the space. But I don't think that's going to appeal to the big players. I think it's going to appeal to the small and middle guys like me that are ready and hungry.
I can see that. So you're speaking to the value of on-chain data essentially, and I think that's a huge other conversation. I know you got to wind down here. I appreciate all your time, Justin. It's been a really amazing conversation. Do you have any final words before we wrap up here, before we go?
Yeah, this has been really fun. And I in addition to, of course, wanting people to come and try out SolForge Fusion and play the game, like I love talking about this kind of stuff. I love like insights on this kind of stuff. So people that want to come and join the conversation on Discord, or you can find me on X or any other platforms, or, the Substack you mentioned. Like, I think that those that are out there, not just that want to play a game like mine, but that want to build games in this space. Like, I'm very passionate about helping creatives, helping people build and grow. And so if you want to reach out to me on those things, I'm thrilled to have those conversations. I think building this next generation of gamer and game designer is an exciting project I'm happy to be a part of.
Super exciting. I might have to pull you into some X Spaces. Are you on Clubhouse too, or no?
No, I'm not on Clubhouse, okay. But what's
your X? Is it at Justin Gary Design?
Justin _ Gary, I believe, is my X here.
Justin _ Gary.
So,
right.
Yeah.
We'll leave a link for that.
Happy to be in spaces, happy to be in conversation.
Amazing. Yeah, I'll follow up with you for sure. I think I could definitely pick your brain for a bit longer, and I appreciate the time that you've given. And I think you've dropped a lot of gems for our listeners, anybody in the Web3 gaming space, anyone in the gaming space, period, frankly, with a lot of the knowledge that you've dropped. So thank you so much for the time. We will have your links for your website and your Twitter and where everyone can connect with you in the description below. And until next time, we will catch you all in the metaverse. Take care, everyone. Peace out.